Hi there, it's Carl Irwin with a quick drum corps season update. As a few of you seem to like some of these videos I've been putting out, so if a few of you like them, here's another. I'm not going to talk about anything in specific. I just want to look at the season, the way it's shaped up and is shaping up, and my thoughts on some of it. I'm on vacation up on the family farm, up at the in-laws' place, and be traveling even more after this down to North Carolina later on in the summer. I'm a music teacher, public school teacher in New York State, teach instrumental music. My wife also teaches instrumental music, public school teacher in New York State. So when we get to summer, we get the heck out of Dodge and we travel around. You might think, being a drum corps alumni, myself and a fan, that I would go see drum corps shows. Not so much. I do love drum corps. My kids are a little bit young to drag around to some of those events. They've seen drum corps and they do like it, but there's more fun things to do than drum corps with the family. So I have been trying to catch some of the shows on Flow. My Flow subscription is probably going to run up here at the end of the month, and I've seen enough. I don't need to pay for another month of this. I know how things are going to kind of shape up, and I can just check the scores and maybe catch a YouTube rendition out there of a show if I want to see it. So anyway, that's where I'm at in the summer, and this is where I'm at with the season. The rankings right now: Blue Coats are in number 1. Blue Devils and Boston Crusaders are 2 and 3, don't know where. And 4 and 5 is Phantom Regiment, Carolina Crown. So a few things about some early assumptions I made on some of the videos and where things stand. I've been pretty close on everything. I initially looked at Boston Crusaders and said that could win. I don't think it can win. But it's certainly competitive. If the Blue Coats don't win, it could be Boston Crusaders, but it's improbable, of which I'll talk about that, why that is the case right now. Let me talk about the Blue Devils real quick. Yeah, they very well may end up in third. I think they will. I think at finals week, I think the Blue Devils will be in third place and Boston Crusaders will be in the second. It will be second. I think they'll be tighter. I think there will be a tighter scoring between Boston Crusaders and the Blue Coats. But I still think that the Blue Coats will win handily. That's how I think it will come out. Yeah, the Blue Devils in third. They won't be in fourth, but they will probably be in third. And this goes back to something I talked about in a previous video. Can the Blue Devils ever be below third? And some people who have been watching drum corps for 10 years or so, the last decade, are jaded in their opinion that they could never be lower than the top 1 or 2. And certainly no lower than 3. But I've been watching a heck of a lot longer than that, and I know that that's not the case. And the reason is because any drum corps can do what the Blue Coats are doing right now, and that is they are attempting. I've been waiting for this for years as a Blue Coat. I've been waiting for this moment, and I don't know why they didn't get there sooner and why other drum corps don't try this. They're attempting to dominate every caption. That is what you have to do. That is what the Blue Devils do every single year. They attempt to dominate all captions. They write for all captions in content and achievement, and they have a talent base that can achieve so that they can win absolutely everything. That's how you do it. And the Blue Coats are doing that. And that is why it is highly probable they will pull it off in the end. Does it mean that they will sweep every captions? They might. It's improbable that they will, but it is highly probable that they will almost win every caption, and it is very highly probable that they will win most of the captions. And just by winning GE and one other caption, you pretty much guarantee that you win it all. It is highly possible to win GE alone, not win any other caption, and place second. It used to be that GE being a plurality of points, that was enough to do it. But it's not like that anymore. Drum corps are too competitive now. They're too similar. There's too many drum corps. All 5 of these drum corps are really close in terms of how hard their shows are and how well they're playing them. Anyway, that's my feelings on the top 3 and what's going on there. Let me talk about Phantom Regiment. I said early on, Phantom Regiment, and the reason why this came up is because DCI put out a ranking system that I took one issue with. It had nothing to do with their system. It had to do with the way adjudication happens early on in the season and the arbitrary inflation of scores over the first few weeks. The scores increase in an arbitrary way. The scores do not increase because the drum corps really get better. They do get better, but that's not why they inflate in the way that they do. They inflate in the way that they do because they do. That's the only reason. And because Phantom Regiment was attending more shows than their competitors, they were getting a better read because of this arbitrary inflation, and they had more high value scores to average out in the most recent three shows that they had. Whereas some of these other drum corps, like the Bluecoats, were hardly performing at all at the beginning of the season. They were working, and then now they're performing more frequently later in the season, which is something the Blue Devils used to be known for. They performed a little bit more than normal, but because of that, Phantom Regiment was getting a higher read because of their higher scores that were inflating over more shows that they're performing. And people were saying, there's no way that they're in third. There's no way that PR, this ranking system is ridiculous. And I said, now hold on a minute. The ranking system is only ridiculous because of the inflation of numbers. But itself is pointing to something that is real. And I argued that Phantom Regiment, while they may not be third, they're certainly pushing that way, and that is real. And here they are. They're in fourth place, at least. They might be in fifth place, but they very well may be in fourth place. Are they going to achieve third? That's improbable because of the point spread. But like this ranking system wasn't, if it was a distance between 2 points, it was like the distance between Washington, D.C. and New York City. It was not the distance between Los Angeles and the moon. Okay, so this outrage over the ranking system is unwarranted. I think it's pretty good. I kind of like that average of 3 and watching how things kind of fall into place, but you have to give it time. You got to give it a few weeks before they catch up to each other in terms of the frequency at which they're doing shows, and also where the inflation of scores kind of chills out a little bit. Because come on, those first few weeks where they're picking up 4 points between 2 shows is nuts. Okay, it's ridiculous. I think that the scores coming out on the first night, for these contending drum corps that are in the top tier by the end of the season, they should be pulling over 90 on night 1. They shouldn't be getting 80 something. They should be getting 91, 2, 3. I mean, the distance between the beginning of the season and the end of the season should only be a couple points. That's how I look at it, because I live in the real world, and I think that of the things that are most made up about the scoring system, the inflation of scores is the most made up thing in drum corps. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. Entertainment value. I find these shows to be highly entertaining for the fact that they're hard. I mean, I'm looking at the Mandarins, and what they're doing is hard. It's just hard stuff, and they're achieving it very well, and I find that to be highly entertaining. What's most entertaining about sports? Beating a world, it's the Olympics right now. Some guy gets in the pool, or lady, or whoever, they get in the pool and they beat a world record. That's the most entertaining thing about what they're doing. It's not the winning. It's the achievement at a high level that is the most there's nothing aesthetic about swimming. I'm sure someone would say, well, there's a beauty to the human form and the water and whatever. Okay, it's about doing hard things well. And when you look at drum corps, what is most entertaining about it is the same thing. It's about doing hard things well. So yes, you can have very esoteric programs that is a bunch of pretentious nonsense. And as long as they're doing hard things well, it is still entertaining. And I hear people out there saying, I'm done with drum corps. It's just not entertaining anymore. But yet they still watch it, and they still buy tickets, and they still get on the forums, and they at least show up to complain. And the only way they can complain is by watching what's happened. And that's because they're lying. They're actually quite entertained because they themselves realize that what they're seeing is hard and it's being done well. So that brings me to the other thing I talked about earlier on another video, and that is elitism in adjudication. Someone on the forums was touting their own graduate degrees in music composition. Do you know how many of us have graduate degrees in music composition? You know, it counts for nothing. I live just down the road from Eastman School of Music, University of Rochester. It's one of the greatest schools of music in the country, one of the greatest schools of music in the world. And I assure you that the vast majority of people at Eastman, even in the brass program, don't know about drum corps and don't care. And if they did see it, if they saw the Blue Devils and saw the way that they perform, they would be superficially interested, but not really. Same with the percussionists, you know, same with, you know, anybody learning dance, you know, fine arts kind of degree in dance at Juilliard or something like that. They wouldn't look at drum corps and find it to be particularly elite. They're very good at what they do. There are elitists in drum corps because they did drum corps, and because they did drum corps, they have a personal affinity for it. But there's nothing about drum and bugle corps that is screaming elitism. That's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous, right? So because of that, I say drum corps adjudication is not about elitism in music. In what degree you have. That's just stupid. It's about the idiom. The sheet is built on the idiom of drum corps and what is present in a drum corps show. That's what the sheets are constructed from. And because of that, it really does come down to the fan perspective. And drum corps judges themselves are fans. Now, I'm not saying that drum corps judges are rating the shows as fans apart from the sheets. What I'm saying is that the sheets are built on fandom. The sheets read as a fan understands the idiom. And because of that, there's not a big disconnect between what is entertaining and what wins. That's all I'm saying. And I think that holds up. I do. Are there some shows that don't win that are extremely entertaining? Of course there are. They're entertaining for different reasons, though. And I think when push comes to shove, nobody would look at a show that is entertaining for those other reasons, those more kind of circus reasons, I guess you'll call them, and then look at the winning shows and say that this is better than that. Nobody would say that. Nobody would actually say that this deserves to win over that, because they're doing something hard and they're doing it well. That's all I'm saying, okay? So anyway, just to kind of kick the wind out of the sail for some of these people out there that think that drum corps is just the world's most... When it comes to elite music, ain't nothing trumping symphonic orchestral music. Not even wind band. Not even, there's a lot of wind ensemble aficionados out there, and I'm one of them. I love wind band music, and I come up with that. I'm a brass player. I played in those groups a whole lot more than I've played in orchestras. But that's a subculture. It's not the umbrella, ensemble. The umbrella ensemble is symphonic music, and there's some pretty wacky stuff out there in symphonic music. If you're not aware, you need to go check it out. There's a lot of weird stuff being composed that's being performed one time and being put on the shelf, and winning all kinds of awards and whatnot, ASCAP, BMI, all these kinds of things. Anyway, enough of that. So just a little bit more on my perspective on adjudication, elitism, and what is entertaining. This is all entertaining. Do I wish that they did a little bit more of the kind of easy listening, more melodic stuff? I do wish for that. But I still appreciate what they're doing and find it highly entertaining because it's hard and it's being done well. Can't get around it. Position in the lineup. This is another debate that I've been having with some people. You go back and look at these shows, the lineups have been extremely random, and you're finding that drum corps that are performing earlier are placing higher, and drum corps that are performing later are placing lower. And I was thinking about this, and it occurred to me, it's always been that way. This whole thing about, well, you ensure that it's fair if it's a random draw every single night. First of all, it is pretty random. Now, I do contend that they put the higher achieving drum corps later in the night. And some people say, well, then that's an indication right there. That right there is an indication that it's not fair, right? And I argue that, no, it's an indication that it's entertaining. Because harder stuff played well is the most entertaining part of drum corps. They have to put these drum corps that have the hardest stuff and are performing well a little later in the night. Otherwise, it's extremely anticlimactic to see them bang out their shows first and then have to sit through some other stuff that isn't as hard and played as well as that other stuff. It's just common sense, right? Now, among the lineup, you do see that in terms of placement, it is quite random. There are some of these regional events where they do place positions by advantage of score. And as you get to finals is based entirely on that. And I think we look at these major events and we look at finals and we presume that that's the way it is all the time. But the season has never been that way. And I was thinking about, back just historically when I was in it and when I watched it as a teenager, when I went to more shows with my friends that were also into drum corps, it was rare that the winner went on last. They would go on later in the night, but it was rare. That's a thing we've made up in our heads. And now I want to end this argument with this. For those of you who feel that there is a great scoring advantage to going on later in the night, and it's not fair to those other groups, and no one can move up from their tier because of the positioning and the slotting because of the lineup. First of all, you have to prove your position, and I can tell you looking at the data, you have an unprovable position. You can't find anything. You can cherry pick. You might find 1 year in one show in 1 year where things kind of went the way the lineup was and say, ha, ha, ha. But you can't find a consistent demonstration of this happening. You just can't find it. You can't find it this season at all. I mean, look at the Boston Crusaders going on, 6 before the end and ending up in first or second. It's just like you can't find it. You just can't find anything that supports your position. And the last thing I want to point out is a philosophical truth. If it matters when you go on in terms of how the outcome works, then the fact is that there is no fair lineup. A random lineup is as unfair as one that isn't. Because there's a benefit to going on later. You solve nothing. So even if you think that this is true and you're convinced of it, you can't posit a solution to it because a random lineup is no more fair than any other kind of lineup because there is a bias that is intrinsic to the timing. That's what you're saying. So knock it off, whatever. You don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, that's what I've observed in the season so far. Again, I probably won't catch much later in the season because I'll be very busy, but I'll be watching the scores, and that's my prognostication. Bluecoats are going to win it. I think Boston Crusaders is going to come in second for reasons, I don't know. Blue Devils are going to be third because they can, because other drum corps are good too. They're not the only great drum corps out there, and other drum corps like the Blue Coats are making decisions to just take everything. They just want it all, and I think the more drum corps that do that, the less the Blue Devils are going to matter in terms of placement. They're going to get knocked down more often than they than they are now. They'll win some, and they'll be fifth. And they'll win and they'll be fifth. And the more drum corps that kind of approach the season in that way, the more that's going to happen. So think about the last time. Vanguard, right? When they last won, that was the same thing. They just kind of swept everything. They were placing extremely high, if not winning almost all the captions. It's just what you got to do. That's the way it is now. You can't be Carolina Crown and say we're going to win because our brass line is awesome. You just can't work it. You have to say, our brass line is going to be awesome. They're going to have the hardest music on the field, and they're going to play it the best. But the drum line is going to have the hardest music on the field. They're going to play it the best. The front ensemble is going to have the hardest music on the field. They're going to play it the best. The visual is going to be the hardest visual on the field. They're going to do it the best. The color guard book is going to feature the best. It's going to have the hardest work, and they're going to do it the best. And then our general effect is going to be so smooth, so logical, so inevitable that we're going to win it. And we're going to do all of that. That's what you got to do. So the drum corps that does that is the true contender. Otherwise, you're going to be depending on another model of winning. And the other model of winning is to say that 5 or 6 drum corps are winning individual captions and nobody has a market on anything. But it has to be that many. It's got to be at least like 4 drum corps splitting up caption wins. And only when that happens can you depend on GE. That's the only time you can really do it. So, and that's rare. That's rare. Maybe that'll become more common when more drum corps try to win everything. I think the more drum corps that behave like the Blue Coats this season and the Blue Devils every season, I think the more often you'll see a split of captions and tighter scores. And where you don't really know how things are going to end up. Anyway, it's really tight. Phantom Regiment is awesome. Carolina Crown is awesome. They're as awesome as they've always been. They're no less than any championship show they've ever... I mean, they've only won the championship one time. But they're no less than then. They're no less than any other year. Boston is just screaming up there. They're worthy. They've been worthy for years now, several years now, and they're as worthy now. They're probably more worthy now than they've ever been. The Blue Devils are the same Blue Devils that have always been out there. They're not weak in any area. They're strong in every area, but so are the Blue Coats. That's the season. So anyway, my thoughts on things. And it's probably the last you'll hear from me on this season and on drum corps, maybe until next year, if at all. So enjoy your season, what's left of it.